Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, where we bring you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation every week. Featuring expert consultants and small business owners who have found success but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their firsthand experience. Now, let's get down to business on Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of Business Banking at Jovia Financial Credit Union, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, CEO, keeper of the brand, marketing and digital agency.
We're focused on being a premier resource for business and entrepreneurship. We bring you weekly business advice, tip, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview some of the top business leaders in the industry.
These days, folks are more aware of self-care and wellness, which is certainly a very good thing to focus on those things. Most importantly, mental well-being, because that's not a fad. It's here to stay. And, if you can't take care of your head, you can't take care of much else.
Exactly. So who's visiting with us today,
We
Ray?
have someone providing us with some enlightenment on the subject is Don Sinkfield. Good friend of mine who is the owner of Help to Adjust Incorporated. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here with you guys.
And we're going to have to up our game because Don himself also has a podcast.
Okay.
Which we're going to talk about in a little bit. He's got that smooth and silky voice, makes you feel very relaxed.
I'll take it.
And I can see why you're very good at what you do, because right there, every time I talk with Don, however I'm feeling throughout the day, I immediately kind of calm down. I just feel good. He's just one of those people that you just feel really good about talking to.
Are you a modern day, relaxed release guy?
I'm learning that I must be, because people come to the podcast and they talk, and then they say that I played a Jedi mind trick on them, and that, they start sharing more than they had intended to.
So for our audience and for me, tell us a little bit about yourself and this Jedi mind trick you play.
See, I didn't claim it. Other people said it. So I'm Don Sinkfield. I'm a Queens, New York guy. I'm from Springfield Gardens, Queens.
Woo!
I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, and moved to Long Island as an adult. And it so happened that I started my business in Valley Stream and have been there for 13 years now.
Okay, sounds like my story. What is your business and what is your subject matter expertise?
So my business is Help to Adjust, Inc. We grew that into the New Hope Mental Health Counseling, which also exists. So both exist at this time. But Help to Adjust, Inc. Started as a way to provide counseling in really an underserved community. When you hear Valley Stream, you think solid middle class, but there's a lot of people of color in Valley Stream that are quote unquote first generation middle class people. They have the jobs as teachers, social workers, correction officers, but I distinguish that from solidly middle class, which might mean that people have little extra resources. The folks in Valley Stream and around Valley Stream, which is Southeast Queens, the Cambria Heights, Laurelton neighborhoods of this community, they really need, in many cases, to use their insurance. And so when we started taking insurance, I used to operate at that time from my cell phone, and my cell phone practically exploded with phone calls. And I realized that we had something that people really needed. And I got a couple of counselors with me. We expanded, got a couple of locations, and I've been at 17 West Merrick Road in Valley Stream for, this is year number 9.
Oh, wow. And so what are some of the services you provide?
We really are a comprehensive mental health practice, meaning that we serve 5 and up, that senior citizens come to us, people with all types of phase of life issues, depression, anxiety, adjustment disorder, all of the things, which, by the way, shouldn't be called disorder, because people have adjustment issues throughout their lives that we believe, we believe in a wellness point of view on mental health, that everyone has the ability to self-direct and learn coping that can improve their way of being and, just their productivity, relationships, and the rest of what makes up life. So, we provide all of those services for all ages. We refer out like the very heavy psychiatric stuff, like if someone is psychotic, having reality, breaks from reality, we'll get them a higher level of care, but we work with everything otherwise.
No person is an island. I'm sure you have a great team, and you alluded to that. Tell us a little bit about your team and about your network and how you work with them.
Yeah, so these days I work remotely mostly, but, I'm constantly on the phone with my office managers. A clinician may come to me for a little supervision, which is the term that we use for advisement on a case if they're working on something with a person that they need a little insight on how to deal with an adjustment issue. Because if you can imagine having younger clinicians, every person is not as versed on each thing. So if it's a marriage and family thing, they may come to me and say, Don, I want some insight from you on this. Or office management might hear about an opportunity for us and may say, Don, would you like to pursue this? So there's constantly things on the business end and on the clinical end that I'm working with on a daily basis.
And you're very passionate about what you do, and that really shines through when you talk about what you do. How did you get involved in this field?
So if you're up for a bit of a long story that I'll try to make short, when I was 21 years old, I got a job through a friend's mom who was a school principal. She was, Don, you would be good as a teacher assistant. And she got me in to the New York City Department of Education. And almost immediately when I got there, people started saying, you have a calming effect on the students. You ought to be a counselor. And at first I was like, oh, well, thank you. Just took it as some kind of offhanded compliment. But then Gwendolyn Jones, who is a friend to this day, she was the guidance counselor, and she kind of started mentoring me. And then I got my bachelor's in social studies education and went immediately back and got a master's in school and mental health counseling at good old Queens College right in my hometown. And, interesting story is that New York did not have a professional counselor license. So most states, if you look at the history of their mental health providing, they have what's known as a LPC for decades, which is licensed professional counselor. But New York used social workers and psychologists. But in 2005, finally, New York got the licensed professional counselor designation. And at that point, in 2006, I became one of the first 3,000 licensed professional counselors in New York. More or less, after that point, I knew that I wanted to pursue this. I just didn't know when. So I thought maybe, because by this time I had started a career as a guidance counselor in the New York City schools, I thought maybe after I retired that I would start a therapy practice. But then it kept needling me internally, like, you need to do this. And so in 2010, I started getting, I listed myself on Psychology Today. I got a little space, and at that point, I started.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, and our guest today is Don Sinkfield, the owner of Help to Adjust Incorporated. there's a lot of misconceptions regarding mental wellness and mental well-being and therapy. Can you talk us through some of that so we can kind of dispel that and get rid of that?
Yeah. So when you talk to people will often joke and say, oh, you don't know my crazy. Like, I have a little crazy, right? So in a real way, I do believe that everyone has something that you could say is on the spectrum of mental health where you would say it's a little left of normal.
My wife can confirm that with me, definitely.
I do not believe you. I so do not believe you, Ray Schwetz.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, that's quite all right. I mean,
it's true, though. I think it's true.
Don, have a session with Ray.
Ray needs a session.
Yes.
Because now he's like acting crazy because he doesn't even need a session.
But I think Don's point is well said. I think everyone needs a session. I think everyone needs to talk to somebody.
Yeah, I think what it is that many people have an anxiety issue when it comes to certain things. Some people can have a little OCD when it comes to certain things. So, my daughter cannot walk on the kitchen floor, for instance, if she doesn't have her slippers on. It's like, oh no, I got to get my slippers. And some other people will say, well, I have to, this table has to be arranged a certain way. The centerpiece needs to be directly in the center. If it's not, it'll drive me crazy. Or someone else gets too angry or is triggered by certain things. So in some way, I believe that we need to normalize the fact that we all have something that we do or some kind of behaviors that demonstrate a little anxiety, or people have depressive episodes even that may not go to the level of being clinically depressed, but, they deal with stuff. But then what it is that most of the time people are so busy, and if you are functioning and trying to live your life, you really don't have time to, quote unquote, deal with that. So whatever it is, you simply adapt it to your lifestyle, and it may be noticed, but there's no need to talk about it. But my belief is that, you could look at counseling as maintenance or tuning in so that you can tune up your own mental health, right? So tuning in, meaning looking at yourself and noticing things. You don't have to put a hard and fast label on it and say that this is something for me to worry about. This is something for me to hide from anyone I can. You could just notice it. And, going to counseling, I always say, is low stakes and high yield, right? So you go in, it's the law that this person treats your information confidentially, and you stand to gain a lot from going to the session. So people out there, if you could see me at this moment, I'm pointing at the camera saying, please do not hesitate to go and get some sessions. It doesn't have to be only when you're not functioning and you're really at a bad place. It can be for tuning, for a tune-up for you.
I love that. I love
do
that
too. And they say that Sahaji P. Henson recently shined light on some of the disparities and challenges in the communities of color. And so I would ask that, do you see an increase in men like Ray, and then other, men like yourself, who are, maybe of a certain age, dealing with a lot of pressure, family, right? Because we raise our boys into men, but it's just like raising a girl, right? But then comes a lot of challenges and support. Absolutely. Because now you have to be the man of the household and lead these families, right? So I think there's two different challenges. One, just men in general, and then, young people of color that deal with a lot of anxiety. So how do you see that in your field a lot? Being in the Southeast Queens neighborhoods, do you, in Valley Stream, do you service those people? And
Absolutely.
So, what would you tell them if they're listening now?
We so the funny thing is that I often say that men come to us through spouse mandated counseling. Like I made that term up right there. But on the serious side, it's either the wife, the mother, the aunt, the caring grandmother who either is the main custodial parent or is very connected to the family that says, Jonathan, just using a random name, Jonathan needs some counseling, or a wife saying, I'm going to leave this relationship if you don't get some help with your anger or infidelity or some behavior that, where they believe that there's love there, but the person is acting out something that they need help with.
Disclaimer, Ray is not a part of that section.
Oh, no. Like Don said, I think we all have our issues. Yeah. And I kind of agree with the tune-up comment in that, look, you can be driving a Porsche and you can be driving a Hyundai Elantra like me. Both cars need tune-ups.
That's a good metaphor. Yeah. And so, what happens typically is that guys come in kicking and screaming figuratively, like, all right, I'm here, she really wanted us to do this. I'm here for it, okay? But then 3 weeks later, after the third session, they're like, if I would have known that counseling was this, I would have come and can I arrange for my own sessions aside from the couple sessions that we're doing? Historically, particularly black men, have been judged and disciplined harshly by the quote unquote system, meaning that in schools, suspensions and expulsions and even lower disciplinary actions like, going to detention or just being disciplined in some way. In New York City, there's a statistic about it. I believe that the amount is like 3.2 times suspensions for black kids versus white kids. And then what happens is that the psyche of the black male particularly, and I'm focusing on black male, but I think males in general, is that they don't want to be labeled, told that they are wrong, even in relationships, to go to a counselor and be told like, it seems like you're really struggling with this or that, and that your wife is okay is a kind of a replication of a PTSD that they've had throughout their adult life. And so, people often shy away from counseling because of that, and then move towards counseling on their own because they find out that it's not a space of being evaluated and judged and given a label. In fact, diagnosis is something we do primarily because it is needed in order for us to be paid by the insurance companies. We don't really want to say, you're having an adjustment disorder, or you're, a major depressive disorder, or you're a person that's having this or that. But we, it is a science to what we do, so we have to put the label on it, but we certainly don't remind people of that during each session.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Don Sinkfield, the owner of Help to Adjust, Inc. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, along with Ray Schwetz on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. And so, Don, I'm hearing a lot, right? And it's just, I'm sure it weighs a lot on just a lot of your clients in general. And we just finished the pandemic, going through the COVID crisis. And so we're still, I believe we're still in kind of like, I call it pandemic residue, right?
That's a good one.
Isolation, people still, depression, stress. Are you hearing that from your clients as well? And if so, how are people dealing with that?
If there was one good thing that came from the pandemic is that more people than ever realized that they could use a little assist with the emotional and mental stuff. So a lot more people initiated sessions. And then after the pandemic ended, which really it just ended, right? People, I believe, will continue to come for the sessions. Most sessions are telehealth that we do. And so we are truly hoping that the insurance companies don't pull back on providing the telehealth services as a covered service because people need it. And so
you still see an uptick in the number of people contacting you for telehealth?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, many people assume that they can come for telehealth sessions versus coming into the office. And it really works well for us, too, because you need one room per session if you are doing in person. And so
kind of limiting, right?
It's limiting.
Yeah.
That's a excellent word for it because in my experience before the pandemic, we would have counselors sometimes double booking rooms, and then somebody would need a room for 6:00, not be able to get the room at that time, have to push back a session. And so telehealth allows people to get the sessions. And I mean, the answer to your question is yes, there is definitely an uptick. Our business doubled, maybe 2.5 the amount of sessions were booked during telehealth, under telehealth for the period of the pandemic. And it still continues to be an increase in people. We have a waiting list.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, you're also a media personality yourself. You have a podcast that's also organically kind of developed as a result of the work you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the podcast is known as the Help to Adjust podcast. It's called If Testimony Was a Person. And what I've done is brought in professionals of all kinds to talk about their personal testimony in, first starting with their own personal life. We start in childhood and go up into adulthood and how they ended up in the profession. And then we focus on issues of equity, inclusion, sometimes psychology, where we just really hash out what's happening in the world. A quick story is that when I was trying to get on the insurance panels early on in 2010 or maybe 2011, I called Aetna insurance company to try to get on the panel. And what happened was they denied me without even knowing any of the circumstances. They simply denied me because they had enough providers. Turns out that a lot of these providers were in their 70s, were no longer practicing anymore, but they said no. And I got someone on the phone, and the woman actually said, well, you would have to appeal, and there would have to be a reason. And so I said to her that I'm providing services for many of the Black communities in Southeast Queens and, in the Long Island area. And she immediately said, send me your application. I will mark it to go through at least for consideration. And I ended up on that panel. So if I was interviewing that lady from Aetna, that would be a story that I would want her to tell because it speaks to something in her field of credentialing that has to do with equity and inclusion.
Fantastic.
That's amazing.
What are the accomplishments? You've accomplished so much. What are the accomplishments that when you think about it, those are the things that ring to you that, I'm so glad that we got to do this?
It's really going to be the things that we've talked about because starting the practice, we have had people thank us just for being there. I am so happy that you all are in this community. I didn't know you all were here. This is wonderful. And, it's a great feeling to really feel like you're making a difference in the lives of people. So even if I'm not doing the counseling, that people say, well, we love Lisa Foray Atkins, or we love, this counselor that we see, Clinton Clovis, or any of the people that I've worked closely with. Lisa, by the way, is the director of the New Hope now, and Clinton has been my partner in the New Hope for a long time. But I'm very proud of that. And then I'm proud also of putting together a podcast, which I would like to get on bigger platforms that really gives voice to everyday people who are in the professions.
We can sit here and talk to you for hours. Your soothing voice, the amazing, your amazing story, just resonates, I'm sure, with so many people listening. I'm just like jumping at the bones here because I have questions about immigration and shelters, and I wrote down generational curse. So we'll definitely have to have you back. I know Ray and I can continue this conversation, especially New York City had the Thrive Initiative. There's so many topics we can sit here and chat about. It is a topic that is so needed right now. And so we thank you for all the work that you're doing, especially in general and in communities of color, because people need you. People need your team. And so
we're glad you're here.
We're glad you're here. Definitely.
And where can we find you?
So on social media, I'm Help to Adjust Counseling. That's Facebook, Instagram. If you want to get us at the New Hope Mental Health, it's info@thenewhopemhcs.com. So that's info@the New Hope MHCS Mental Health Counseling Services.com. Or you may find me as Don Sinkfield also on Facebook and Instagram.
Excellent. Well, Don, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on, and we encourage folks to reach out to Help to Adjust Incorporated and the Hope.
Yeah, Ray and Donyshia, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
You as well. I'd like to leave you with DB's philosophy. Anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be manageable. Mr. Rogers.
I want to thank you for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, your co-host and producers. Visit nccradio.org for more information. We are available on Odyssey, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and as a podcast in iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.